plan. First item on the agenda is the call to order, where we do read the vision, mission, and core values document for the city of Belmont. The vision statement being that Belmont will be a vibrant, multi-generational community that incorporates small town charm and heritage with an entrepreneurial spirit. And the mission statement being that the city of Belmont provides visionary leadership and high-quality city services to create a community of choice for our residents, visitors, and employees. A few of our core values are to uphold the professionalism and ethics expected of elected officials and to maintain balance and open-mindedness in executing our duties. A couple of housekeeping items. Be sure that you do put on your microphones and turn them on. This meeting is going to be recorded as a joint meeting between council and planning and zoning. The next item on the agenda is to set the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Made by Neil.
Second.
Seconded by Dan Hartley. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The agenda is set. The next item on the agenda is the adoption of minutes from the September 13th Planning and Zoning Board meeting. All of these items were included in your packet. I hope you had a chance to review them before the meeting. I would entertain any questions or comments or amendments to those meeting minutes. And if none, I'd entertain a motion to adopt as presented.
So moved.
Made by Neil.
Second.
Seconded by Walter Dixon. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I do see Dan Hartley counting planning and zoning board members. We do have 5 here, which is a quorum. We do have a couple that are running a little late, but we do have a quorum for our meeting this evening. On to the public items. There is no public hearing at the moment for this evening, so we'll move on to the pedestrian plan update that will be made by staff.
Thank you, Planning Board and City Council. I'm actually going to turn this one over to our consultant for the pedestrian plan update study, which is Alta, and Spencer Finch, as well as Elizabeth Burke, are here tonight to present this topic for your consideration.
Can you make sure that's working? I can't hear it. She has to speak directly into it.
I'm normally pretty good at being loud. Can you guys hear me?
It's not on.
It's not.
Doesn't seem like it's on.
You have to talk into it. Is it on?
All right, let's try it. Can you guys hear me?
You can hear it now.
All right. So again, we have Spencer Finch and Elizabeth Burke with Alta Planning and Design here tonight to present to you the Belmont pedestrian plan update. So with no further ado, I'll go ahead and turn it over to them.
Thanks, Stephanie, and thank you all for having us here. We're going to present a quick summary of the pedestrian plan. Here's a quick agenda for that portion of the agenda for tonight. We'll review the draft plan, give an overview of the methodology we did in compiling the data and coming to conclusions for the plan. We came up with a set of priority projects that we recommend the city pursue, and then we are going to go beyond one of the program recommendations included in the report and talk a little bit more about Vision Zero and what is Vision Zero. Basically what you're seeing are going to be excerpts of what the report itself looks like. This is the cover and the table of contents. The report itself reviews the existing conditions of the pedestrian environment here in Belmont. Does some analysis, comes up with a set of recommendations related to potential projects that could be done in town. Has some recommendations in relation to programs and policies, and next steps in relation to implementation. And then several appendices just documenting all the work that we did. So, in the introduction, very similar to the vision statement for the city, we do have a vision statement for the pedestrian plan. says that the plan will update the environment, will envision the city of Belmont as a place where walking is safe, accessible, fun, and supportive of an active, healthy lifestyle, where people of all ages and abilities can move and access their daily needs safely by foot and by all forms of active transportation. And we realize that we all deal with infrastructure that has been here maybe since the time of our grandparents, right? And everything that was built around might not really be accommodating to all users. For example, the photo that you see here on light poles being on the way, a wheelchair user or somebody with a baby stroller will not be very comfortable or even able to get around many light poles in town. The project purpose, you kind of look over the history of pedestrian planning here in Belmont. The first pedestrian transportation plan was completed in 2009. It was a 10-year implementation period, and other citywide plans that developed in the meantime. And a grant application was submitted to NCDOT to help fund the update. And this is what we have here tonight. The planning process started really in 2022, where we started the opportunities and constraints analysis, really looking at the existing conditions of the network, pedestrian network here in Belmont. In parallel, we were also completing pedestrian sidewalk inventory, trying to gauge the condition of sidewalks and sidewalk gaps all over town. And that's a separate report that is referenced within this one. The draft pedestrian and bicycle network was developed summer of 2022, and that is also the time where public review of these items was started. One open house was actually in April, just introduced the public and stakeholders to the project, and we continue with various public outreach after that. A second open house was held in October of 2022, and that's approximately the time when we started drafting the updated plan as well. We spent the past year just going through multiple iterations and revisions of the plan in coordination with planning and NCDOT and others. And now we're looking to really put an exclamation point at the end of the planning process and really help the city move forward to implementation. The plan goals and objectives are listed here at right. They work to enhance the connectivity, accessibility, and mobility of residents and visitors to Belmont. Second key goal was to improve safety, and we'll talk a lot more about that in a little bit. It was also to identify funding strategies where the city could find the resources and pull resources to implement the recommendations. It was also to help create more opportunities for healthy living, more opportunities for exercise for everybody in the community, promote equity, and make sure that young or old, everybody in Belmont could have access to the destinations in town. And with that, increase the quality of life, provide access to all the parks and natural recreational areas in Belmont and surrounding areas. And of course, all of these improvements also will generate a positive economic benefit. Just zooming into that timeline, this you can gauge a little bit more detail. We're looking forward to helping the city with the implementation of recommendations in the coming year. So why invest in walking, right? And there's many different factors that we reference in the report, but two main ones we just want to share with you tonight are safety and health. So from 2007 to 2020, NCDOT reported 85 crashes involving pedestrians here in Belmont, and we know that number is actually higher. In the report, we actually updated it up to the end of 2022, and we know that there have been even more between that period and today It's just that NCDOT has not updated all the stats at this point. And we know that investing in pedestrian infrastructure really can improve safety. So if you install sidewalks to avoid pedestrians walking in the roadway, you decrease crashes by 69 to 89%. If you increase enforcement to reduce vehicle speeding, you can reduce crashes by 70%. If you install pedestrian refuge islands in the middle of a roadway, which has a really wide road, you can reduce crashes by 56%, and so forth. And reducing crashes is key, but reducing speeds is also a key safety measure. If a pedestrian is hit by a vehicle at 25 miles per hour, you would have an 89% chance of surviving that crash. If the vehicle was going at 45 miles per hour, that percentage really falls dramatically to just 35%. So you would only have about a 1 in 3 chance of surviving. Health benefits, right? Improving the pedestrian network also has benefits to everybody's health. If you have a community that is walking, instead of driving to get a jug of milk at the store, at the corner, it can really help reduce the obesity and other health issues, diabetes and health issues. So the biggest killers in America. So for every half mile to 0.6 mile walk, it can result in a 5% reduction in obesity rates. And you see that can also be quantified in monetary terms. Carolina Thread Trail, that is the physical activity benefits of walking, running, at over $7.20 for each trip. Multiply that by all the users, and you would really have a great impact. So what are the existing conditions here in Belmont, right? So you see in white is really what is jurisdictional, the boundaries of the city. And in orange, you see the existing sidewalk network here in town. In green, it's the existing greenway network. And in purple, there's a few multi-use paths here and there. And what you see is that a lot of the gray roadways do not have sidewalks or pedestrian facilities. And even in the orange areas, there might be gaps in pedestrian connectivity, even downtown. When we overlay that with the pedestrian crashes, then that becomes a more urgent call for improving the pedestrian network. So the dots that you see on the map, the darker the dot, the more serious the crash is, right? So the darker is where there's been a fatality or serious injury. And you see that a lot of these are concentrated along some of the major arterials, right, like Wilkinson Boulevard, but also on Central and Main here around downtown. And on Catawba, even on the road all the way from the town to here, where we are today at CityRec. If we zoom in a little bit, you see here the cluster along Wilkinson, and off Wilkinson a little bit. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And you see that in the southern half of Belmont, because there's less traffic and less pedestrian activity, there's less crashes as well. Here you see some graphs that kind of give you a little bit more data about all the crashes that we quantified here in the past decade or so. And the severity varies, right? 9% of them resulted in fatality. And they vary by age group, so that's the graph at bottom left. You see that there's a big cluster in folks between 20 to 50 years old, but also that the elderly are disproportionately represented in relation to the proportion of the population. So those 60 to 69 and those 80 and over, our percentage is much higher than the percentage of the population here in Belmont. On the crash frequency graph, graph, top right, you see that there are a lot of off-roadway parking lot crashes. So that is something that is beyond the purview of the city, of public government, public entities here in the room today. But that is something that policies can impact as well, right? So these are crashes that are happening in parking lots of major retailers and others here in town. And that is something that policy can impact as well. But outside of that, there are multiple types of incidents. Typically, the ones that rank highest after that are backing vehicles, turning vehicles, right, where vehicles are turning left or right. There's typically the blind spot that they might not see a pedestrian. And pedestrians failing to yield or walking along roadway. So those are events where pedestrians do not have proper facilities, right? They might be failing to yield because there's not a marked crosswalk or there is not a crosswalk at all. And they might be walking on the roadway because there is no sidewalk. In all those rounds of public input, we gathered a lot of comments. So this is just one sample of some of the input that we got. We did some surveys, so only 7% of those polled said that the pedestrian network development was excellent. 63% said it was fair, 29% said it was poor. And then we also wanted to gauge where were folks trying to get, what were the destinations that they desired to go to. And the top destinations were parks, 83%, and then restaurants, bars, and cafes with 80%. And of course, others that ranked high were also the grocery store, right? If you want to go to the supermarket and get some supplies, or if you were going to friends or family. The maps on this slide on the right and on the next two slides, you'll see some of the comments about specific neighborhoods, wanted specific improvements, typically to close gaps, right? To be able to walk their kids to school or get to that park destination. So here on the side of Belmont, you saw lots of comments saying, let's connect to Belmont Central School, let's connect to the parks, let's connect to Crabtree and other destinations along the existing greenway system here, even outside of Belmont. That's just one example. So here's zooming in into that figure. And here are some of the comments that we received from public input in the south of the city. Here's just a few pictures of all the public outreach on even the events where we were represented, like the open houses and the public and stakeholder meetings, that some of which were held here in this room. Tiffany and her crew did many, many more, right? Pop-up events, going to special events where kids were playing, going to the library, trying to reach folks where they are, where you didn't have to really set aside time on your calendar to attend the meeting. And it was very successful, and we document all of these events in the report. Here are some of the activities that we did during these public events. So, for example, on the top left, there were a bunch of different programs that we suggested to the public, right, that could be implemented here in Belmont. And you see here that a lot of the dots were really focused on education and making Belmont more walk-friendly. So the top right one was the walk-friendly community, followed by educational campaigns and Vision Zero speed reduction, right? So those are all interrelated and are all programs that I'll explain a little bit more. Looking for the vision, right? My dream street. What would my dream street have? We have quality sidewalks everywhere. We have street lights. We'll be inside walker-friendly neighborhoods. Sidewalks that are dog-friendly, plenty of grass and shade, no trip hazards, traffic that moves a little bit slower. So based on our analysis on reaching out to many city departments and stakeholders in the public, we came up with several recommendations. We looked at the sidewalk inventory and saw where sidewalks are missing, where crossings are missing, and so forth. And we looked at the key plan goals, right? And documented. These are the big map, right? Like now you zoom in and you see the overall recommendations where ultimately Belmont could be a few decades from now if you completed the entire pedestrian network, right? So the solid lines are where current infrastructure exists, and the dashed lines is where new infrastructure would be recommended. And you see here in North Belmont, there's lots of dashed lines, lots of opportunity to connect downtown to Wilkinson Boulevard, to Belmont Abbey, and to other neighborhoods further north. The red dots that you see are where key pedestrian crosswalk improvements are recommended. These are locations where there might not even be a compliant ADA ramp, or there might not even be a crossing right now. And folks are really taking a big risk crossing at unmarked locations. The North Central recommendations focus a little bit more on downtown. And you see here a lot of crossing improvements recommended in downtown and up towards Wilkinson Boulevard. And then lots of recommendations focused on Central and Main and Park, right? So the main north-south corridors here in this portion of town. As we move to South Central, the recommendations are really tied to long-term development, right? This is where the city is expanding right now, and there are opportunities for future development. The Catawba Crossings Parkway is proposed for the future, so we wanted to make sure that recommendations here were tied into all these future plans for this portion of the city. And finally, all the way down in South Belmont, a lot of the recommendations are tied in to the existing neighborhoods that surround Botanical Garden and the parks in that part of town. So Laurel's River, Overlake, Hunts Point, and the other neighborhoods there really are isolated islands. They have sidewalks. You see some completed yellow segments there, but then they don't connect to each other or to the open space areas that are a destination. So after we compile all these opportunities, it's too many, right? Like what do we do with so many opportunities for improvement? How do you prioritize? So we really looked at creating a layer of filters, right, that can really help identify where the most urgent, the most impactful, the most bang for the buck recommendations are. And this is the score based on stakeholder input that we use to filter these opportunities into the priorities. 35% of the score was due to safety because of all the safety issues that we saw and the statistics that unfortunately did not go down, right? All the stakeholders and we felt that safety should be a big criteria for prioritization. And it's also in line with what NCDOT and the feds are looking for these days. Then another big factor was connectivity. And we broke it down into two layers. One was connectivity for recreation, just because so much of the public wanted to get to open space areas. So that got a 50% score. And then, of course, connectivity to employment and housing, right? So, and especially, we came back to the equity criteria. It was especially relevant for connectivity for senior residents, right? There are senior communities here in Belmont that don't have really great access to shopping or to open space facilities. to be part of other plans, right? We didn't pull these out of the hat. Being part of other plans that are either in the city, the county, or the region, also help push some of these recommendations to the top. So what came out of this prioritization process? You can see here, it can basically be seen as three big packages, right? We could have identified one or two intersections that are priorities, but that would not have a big impact for the entire community. So it was really a matter of figuring out what would make implementable packages of infrastructure, and that would meet the criteria and the priorities of stakeholder and public. So number one came on North Belmont improvement package that really focuses on Wilkinson Boulevard and connectivity to areas north of I-85, connectivity into Belmont Abbey and to the Paramount Hospital site, currently under construction. Number two was a downtown safety improvement package that really builds on the current projects that are going on, like the Greenway. And then an East Belmont improvement package that completes the connectivity from downtown to here, to CityWorks, and the recreational areas here on the east side of town. So we'll go into a little bit more detail here, right? So the North Belmont improvement package, when you zoom in, you see lots of dashed lines here, but you see some key improvements, right, that are required. And then what you see also is that some of these improvements are highlighted in yellow. So those improvements that are highlighted in yellow are improvements that NCDOT will complete for the city as part of their I-85 widening project, right? So starting from the top, call up there, relocated Belmont Mount Holly Road. So NCDOT will change the interchange of I-85 with Belmont Mount Holly Road. They'll shift the roadway west a little bit, and they will build the new pedestrian infrastructure along that route, and also the rail trail, right? The old rail alignment that parallels the current alignment with the roadway will be converted to the rail trail. So all of those are going to be included in that DOT package, including some improvements on Wilkinson Boulevard, that intersection right there at Wilkinson and Belmont Mount Holly Road, right? But we recommend that the city continue to be involved, continue to talk with DOT, because in reviewing the DOT 30% plans, there was opportunity to complete some gaps that were not yet included in those plans. So this is a recommendation that would lead the city. With that package, the items highlighted in yellow will complete a lot of the connectivity north to Belmont Abbey. And that will be a total of $634 million at this point. That's a significant investment. If you can make sure that your needs and wants are known to DOT, they will include it. Project, there are other opportunities for connectivity as part of this package. You see other red dots, right? Those are intersection improvements that are needed to improve safety, especially on Park, which unfortunately has seen a history of crashes recently. And eventually opportunity to connect north to Paramount Hospital site. The dashed purple line on the right side could follow Park into that site. But there were suggestions even of having that green dashed line across I-85 that would be a pedestrian bridge that would connect to the hospital and really help create that integration between the hospital facilities, the college, and then the Walmart and the commercial facilities and the senior facilities that are all on each side of I-85, but completely disconnected from each other. So that's more of a long-term investment. Talk about Park and the history of crashes there. So this is just a quick rendering of what the intersection of Park and Holly could look like in the future. And this would be a base level improvement. You can even do more than what's shown here. But what you see at that intersection today is that it's a very wide intersection, right? With no pedestrian facilities, no sidewalks, no crosswalks. And this is a factor in the accident rate here. So on the rendering on the right, a multi-use path would be built on the west side of Park. So you see a cyclist there on the other side of the road. And a sidewalk would be built on the east side of the road. So you see the pedestrians here on this side of the road. Crosswalks would be clearly marked, would be ADA compliant. And you could even install signage and pedestrian countdown signals to make sure that folks would have ample time to get across. Moving on to the second package, that's the downtown pedestrian safety improvement package. So these, we zoom into downtown, right, and you see Central and Main and Park. And in this case, all of the items highlighted in yellow are the items that are included in this package. So the green dashed line is the rail trail that's coming from north across Wilkinson into downtown. And that's in the city plans already. And then you see multiple intersection improvements. Downtown actually has good sidewalk coverage. You see a lot of the orange completed sidewalk in the continuous line here downtown. There's a few areas where you would recommend more. There's actually a pedestrian destination. That's why folks come downtown. But a lot of the intersections need improvement, right? They might not be compliant with the latest ADA requirements. So as part of this package, we added up the rail trail plus all of these intersection improvements. It actually does not add up to such an expensive project, right? This package, if you were to complete it all in $25, would be about $8.8 million total, right? And $5.6 million of that would be for the rail trail in $25. So the safety improvements, base level safety improvements that would be needed here, would add up to about $3.2 million, which is not such a huge figure to really make significant improvements to safety downtown. So here's an example of a simple intersection improvement that would have great safety implications. So this is the intersection of Main and Central, north of downtown, looking south. So you're looking towards downtown. You see the railroad tracks on the left, right? So that's on the east side of the roadway. That's where the rail trail would be in the future, right? So in the rendering, you see a trail alongside the rail. And the rail trail budget will complete that. And then for folks who want to get to the rail trail or get to the Mercy site on the other side of the tracks, there's no way to walk or bike there today, right? So what we see here is a simple crosswalk improvement. We just extend the sidewalk a little bit, build an ADA ramp. You do a bump out on the west side of the road so people can actually get around that pole right there that currently blocks the sidewalk. Here on the rendering, you see somebody standing right there, right? It's a little bit like my grandma. Just waiting for the signal to change to get across the roadway, right? So that very simple improvement, right? So just making sure that that crosswalk is marked as safe, has a pedestrian signal, will make that connection to the rail trail possible, will make that connection to the Mercy site possible. And then it can also be the gateway into town, right? There's a little red sculpture right there at the middle behind that black Dodge that's coming towards us. there's different things you can do there. There's a little plaza there right now, sitting area, to make it a really nice pocket park, right, that the neighborhood can enjoy as well. Finally, the third package of improvements is the Eastern Belmont Improvement Package. And here you see all the dashed lines on Catawba, from Park, all the way here to City Works and the new Recreation Center, and continuing on to Lofton Park, and then looping back on Abbey Creek Greenway, right? Connecting back to Park that way. So you almost create a loop of connectivity that really surrounds the neighborhoods within and creates a lot of connectivity for all the neighborhoods around as well. And we performed conceptual design and planning level estimates, right, for some of these improvements. And it came out to about 6.2 million. 4.3 for the safety improvements, and then 1.9 million for the greenway. Which a lot of it, of which you have budgeted already, and this is in 2025 dollars. And of course, here's part of that loop, right? Completing that loop will really change the character of everything that's the park. You won't have to drive to go to Lofton Park. Everybody will be walking, jogging, biking on the greenway and coming here to the restroom. So in addition to the package of project improvements, we also have recommendations in relation to programs and policy. We list a lot of these as initiatives that are supported or promoted by DOT or others. For example, Complete Streets is making sure that our streets are designed for every user, like for cars, of course, for trucks, yes, for pedestrians, cyclists, for you walking your dog, for somebody jogging with a baby stroller, for somebody who has ADA needs, or if you are an elderly person that really needs a little bit of extra time to get across the street. Part of those programs that we recommend, I think one of the biggest priority ones is Vision Zero, right? So traditionally, engineers like me and folks in the policy arena have really looked at traffic deaths as accidents, right? We don't like to use the word accident anymore. It's really a crash. It's really trying to find the root cause of what's causing all these injuries and all these fatalities. So when a plane accident happens, you don't want it to say, oh, it was just an accident and not investigate the root cause. You have the FAA, they dig in deep and they figure out what you can do better to prevent similar occurrences in the future. And that should be the approach we take to our traffic. Accidents, crashes, to our injuries and fatalities in our roadway network. Traffic deaths are preventable. We need to understand that human behavior is not perfect. Engineers designed for perfect human behavior, right? And we know that we're not perfect, and these days we even know that the technology driving our cars is not perfect either. Have been really focused in the past to prevent collisions. Now we really need to prevent fatal and severe crashes. And again, taking that systems approach. We don't blame the individual. We really try to fix the many multiple factors that make a crash occur. And really look at small improvements. Small improvements don't have to be expensive. They can really make a difference in helping us prevent injuries and fatalities. I'll come back to Vision Zero in just a little bit, but just to summarize a lot of the recommendations for the pedestrian report. These are the main ones that we list in the implementation section. We really want to encourage the city to continue to set aside funds. We know that no single individual, no single city can do it all on their own, right? You need to build up the funds that you have and then manage the efforts by others. efforts by the state, by the feds, to get those additional funds that we need to complete the projects and put the programs in place. We recommend you tackle the 3 priority packages, really look at building infrastructure for all, really look at capacity. Many times, right, you need to build up your internal capacity to be able to implement those projects as well. And rely not just on public funding, make sure that I know the city does this already, but continue to ask developers and public development to follow the shape that the city wants to see in the future, right? You're building the city for your kids and your grandkids, and you have the power to shape that future today. So next steps, I know we're talking about the Vision Zero ordinance a little bit later. Continues to set aside that funding for improvements. Take a hard look at the safety improvements that are needed. For example, we have that rendering at Park and Conley. We know there's a lot of accidents there. The safety first, Vision Zero approach really requires that we take a look at that. And as I mentioned, nobody can do it alone. Let's seek support from others. Let's partner with others to make sure that you have the resources and the capacity to make things happen cheaper, better, quicker, and not all on your own. So, what's Vision Zero, right? Vision Zero is to prioritize pedestrian and bicycle safety, the vulnerable users, the most vulnerable users. So, 42,000 people were killed in preventable traffic crashes in the U.S. in 2020. We should be lighting some candles to those, but also doing something about it. 1.5% of our population had, in the entire United States, 4.8 million people had roadway injuries in 2020. Can you imagine 1.5% of the population every year having to deal with some sort of roadway injury? It's something that our medical health system cannot handle, right? It's not a problem just for them, it's a problem for all of us. The pedestrians are the most vulnerable part of that picture. Nearly 18 people per day were struck and killed while walking in 2020. And we saw a big increase throughout the last few years of pandemic and this pandemic. And it's not getting better, it's continued to go up. So something happened that really is increasing the risk to pedestrians and vulnerable users in general. 15% of all roadway deaths were pedestrians, even though only about 3% of all the trips in the U.S. are made with pedestrians. The top 20 most dangerous states are shown in this picture. North Carolina is number 14. I'd love to see us get out of the top 20, right? This is not a top 20 list that we need. And there is a disparity also, right? There's an equity issue that 14.5% of residents live below the poverty line here in Belmont, right? And the graph on the right, you see that, and their mean, their household income for those residents here in Belmont is about $29,000, right? So they're part of this first very high column here on the left, right? Pedestrian fatalities disproportionately impact those with the fewest means. And 14.5% of Belmont residents are in this category. So here's zooming in into North Carolina and going from national down to state, right? There were over 1,000 pedestrian-involved crashes. That's the latest data in 2023, right? And we haven't finished the year there. And we're still going up. 10% of those that involve pedestrians resulted in a fatality or an injury. So you see here at the bottom, right, 1,000 pedestrians crashes is fewer than the 3,300 motorcycle crashes, right? But the yellow and red lines show the number of fatalities related to pedestrian crashes. And it's the highest of all, followed only by bicycle crashes, right? So these are the most vulnerable users. Even motorcycle driver has a better chance of surviving. Here's just a graph showing the numbers keep going up, and the contributing causes to these crashes. Generally, speed is the number one, and some sort of impairment is, when you combine different categories, would come in second. And this is the graph that I showed before, just showing the different types of pedestrian-involved crashes here in Belmont. And they follow a similar pattern. So why is this happening, right? Why do pedestrian crashes keep going up? Why do vulnerable users keep getting injured or worse? So it's a combination of land use and speed and the roadway design. Blame us engineers, right? We've been doing the same thing over and over. We haven't improved it. We're trying to improve it now. Part of it is the vehicle size. Cars are getting bigger and bigger, right? We're driving more SUVs and more, right? So again, look at the multiple factors that are involved. So how can we impact that? It's really looking at it from the system's perspective. I mentioned, when there's an airplane crash, we don't blame the pilot, right? We go and look what happened. Look at the whole system. Something might have gone wrong with the airplane, something might have gone wrong with air traffic control, there might have been weather, and there might have been a human factor too. Not that it's the pilot's fault, it might have been something related to the human factor. And that's how we have to start looking at our roadways as well. If road users make mistakes, right, we need to look at those and see what's the appropriate speed limits. For us in policy-making positions, look at how you can change the policies and dedicate funding to improve safety. And of course, if you're a pedestrian, cyclist, or driver, let's make sure you're responsible for following the rules. I went over this in the beginning, right? It's really trying to look, not at pointing fingers, but really looking at what small measures you can take with all the different factors that impact a crash, with all the different folks that are involved in designing the transportation system, the car, and the policies that govern transportation. And this is something that is becoming more and more the norm. Here, the green dots are all the cities that have adopted Vision Zero policies. Here in North Carolina, you see Durham and Charlotte, but many others have adopted and are looking to adopt policies as well. And there's an opportunity to not only adopt a policy, but tap a lot of federal funding that is really unprecedented, right? So we've seen a lot of different federal funding programs be created recently. The biggest one directly related to safety is Safe Streets and Roads for All. So it has $5 billion over 5 years. So this would be the third year now. So we have $3 billion to go to really tap funding for plans and for building infrastructure that is safer in our communities. And a lot of the communities around us here in Belmont have already won grants from Safe Streets for All. So Charlotte won an implementation grant of $4.5 million last year. Kannapolis, Land of Sky, MPO, RPO, Boiling Springs, and Rock Hill all won planning grants. So they won all that money to really plan and start implementing projects that make our cities safer. Here are details about the plan, about the Safety for All program. You can ask me later, I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but if you're interested, we can talk about it. Part of the program is split into developing an action plan first, and that is a requirement to then go for further funding. But the action plan is really zeroing in on those locations that we found in the PAD plan and trying to figure out what can be done to make it safer. And you have assistance from NCDOT. It's a big push from DOT to really incorporate safety into the program. We have a whole series of primers online and technical assistance to help you pursue state and the Safe Schools for All program as well, including sharing sessions among communities of the same character, same size, and also hosting the annual Vision Zero Leadership Institute, having local folks go and learn all about safety. So when we implement Vision Zero and safety programs, we really look at how we can make it successful. And we've done Vision Zero plans and projects all over North Carolina and all over the country. Just a few quick lessons learned to wrap up. Right. Near the end here, hope holding your attention here. So we really need to humanize traffic deaths, right? It's not just a statistic. Somebody lost a loved one. We need to make sure it was preventable. We need to make sure that we do the best to make sure that doesn't happen again. That's an amazing goal, and we should stick to it. But it couldn't be just a hope and a wish, right? We really need to set feasible, time-constrained goals of how we're going to implement something to change the situation. You got to keep gathering feedback, right? See how your projects and your programs are doing. Gather that feedback and incorporate it into your future programs and policies. Build consensus. You really have to engage the public, engage stakeholders to make sure that projects are successful to begin with and then are supported as they go on. Build upon your current efforts, right? You have some efforts already in place, build them up. You don't have to hire tons of new staff to do it. And really develop an implementation toolkit, a little bit of the shortcuts of how you're going to make it happen. Right? So just to go over a couple of these, humanized traffic deaths is really trying to communicate, right, to a driver or to a policymaker or to a potential funder, right? This is what's happening here. This is not a statistic. We can change it, and this is what we're going to do with that. So a lot of it is related to public campaigns to improve safety, right, to make sure that folks are paying attention. These are some public campaign documents from Belmont, Virginia, where we help with their safe routes to school and safety programs, right? Just to give folks a heads up, right, that they need to be paying attention to what's happening around them. And really, after you build some of these projects, keep track. Don't just, go to a ribbon cutting ceremony and don't keep track of what's happening. Really try to gauge what's happening, right? What has been effective and what not. Right, so here is some data tracking that we've done for Austin, Texas. Just keeping track of the impact that the projects and programs that we helped them with have had, and they have resulted in these levels of reduction in crashes, injuries, left turn crashes, and injuries and fatal crashes from left turns. So that's a quick summary of the production plan and of Vision Zero and what it can do to improve safety in Belmont. We'd be glad to take questions from you.
Thanks, Spencer, for that presentation on a very robust document that your firm has presented to us tonight. Thank you for that. Anything from you, Tiffany, at the moment? Marching orders for our group?
Sure. Staff would ask that you all engage in any questions or conversation related to the pedestrian plan update as presented here tonight, and specifically for planning board. If you are comfortable doing so, staff would be willing to accept a recommendation from your group to City Council to consider adoption of the pedestrian plan update as one of our adopted long-range plans for the city of Belmont. And to do so, one of the suggested things that we would need to do is look at its consistency with the comprehensive land use plan. And so we would be asking planning board, if they're comfortable, to determine whether or not the pedestrian plan update as presented here tonight is reasonable and in the public's best interest, and also whether or not it's consistent with the comprehensive land use plan goals. Some ideas of consistency goals could be in the goal of mobility, providing choice in how citizens and visitors may move around Belmont. Goal 6 of infrastructure, to ensure high quality, efficient, and effective infrastructure throughout Belmont. And goal number 8, intergovernmental relations, to partner with surrounding jurisdictions and state agencies to promote the interests of Belmont's citizens and to ensure the ongoing success of quality of life within the greater Charlotte metropolitan region. So,
Very well said, thank you.
you're welcome, and I have that written down as well if that's helpful, but I really wanted to make sure you guys had a chance to ask any questions of Alta, who has been spending over a year and a half with staff, citizens, a steering committee, and multiple rounds of engagement in order to prepare the document before you tonight for consideration.
Great, thank you. So I think what we'll do is obviously we'll open it up for planning board comments and questions of Alta, but also would invite our city council and mayor guests. If they have any comments to help drive the discussion, feel free to chime in on our discussion. Mr. Neal.
On your, you said you're trying to find the root causes of the crashes. When you take a look at those various intersections in Belmont where there have been crashes, it occurs to me that perhaps looking at the root causes of some of those might help prioritize which ones, if we were to adopt the plan here, which ones to go after first. Are you using some kind of methodology, root cause investigation methodology, whether it's programmatic, design, personal error? I mean, the root cause investigation industry is that there's a real set methodology to go through to find out what the root cause is. It's not just, let's go find the root cause. I mean, there's a way to do that. Do you all do that? And would that methodology be helpful in the city of Belmont prioritizing which intersections to go after first?
That's a very good question, thank you. As you, so there's different levels of analysis that are done, right? There's specific analysis. For the pedestrian plan, we really just quantified where crashes were happening, right? So that's one element of the analysis. The second element was really looking at the design features, the engineering design features of intersections.
Yeah, but
So
why did the crash occur? Is one of the, why did it occur? Was it the pedestrian's fault? As you alluded, there were different possibilities as to why a crash would occur. Some would be speed, some would be weather, some would be, and so on and so forth. So, and some would be, maybe the intersection isn't designed very well.
correct.
Or maybe the intersection is designed pretty well. There's a balance there. So what I'm getting at is, if we're gonna get a pot of money from somebody, and we wanna invest it in correcting some of these areas in section 1, section 2, and section 3, it seems to me that within those sections, we ought to have an idea of which are the ones that we can improve safety more in. So that's the gist of it. In other words, is there a root cause investigation process that either you have followed or you'd recommend that we would follow to prioritize within those 3 areas?
So what we did was you start different levels of planning and analysis, right? So we were looking at 30,000 foot view, and we were able to document for you where crashes occurred, and then we documented for you in the recommendations map where we clearly saw that intersections had some design features that were missing, and also documented for you where sidewalk segments were missing. So we know that some of the crashes that have occurred here were, I showed you Park and Holly, right? There's no sidewalk there right now. And there's no crosswalks. And there's no safe way for pedestrians to cross there right now. So at that 30,000 foot view, even at 30,000 foot view that a pedestrian plan does, right, we were able to flag those for you. When you get, then there's a second level of planning that we recommend, and that's part where Vision Zero comes in, where you're gonna seek funding and resources to do it yourself, or ask the DOT to do it, or ask a consultant to do it, to identify of these locations that we flagged and said, you know, this is the first filter. We're saying that these, let's say, downtown Belmont and along Wilkinson Park are some of the priority intersections, right? Now you're gonna do a second filter and look, okay, so these need specific, these are the most risky, right?
Yeah.
And these are the ones that you should invest in first. I never say that some of these are part of these packages, right?
Okay, good.
That's what we included in these packages, but you have to do this second level analysis. And then it's like a bridge between planning and engineering. Then it's usually planners and engineers collaborating at that second level of analysis and saying, these are the key intersections, these are the countermeasures, that's a word that we use a lot today, that you're gonna use to make this section of town safer. And then you send it just to the peer engineers through us to design that actually, you know, put all those engineering plans in place. So it's kind of a three-step process. And that second step is where you get into that root cause
Okay,
analysis.
good, thank you.
Thanks, Neil.
Man, I have one question and I have a comment. So the rail trail you showed from downtown to Wilkinson, then you showed from Wilkinson to the Abbey.
Yep.
How do you cross Wilkinson? Is that in this plan or is it,
So
that's huge, right?
That's me, so that, from my understanding, is being included with the design plans from NCDOT, that they're in that design build process. We don't have the final plans as to what exactly that'll look like, but that will be within NCDOT's scope.
Okay,
Yes.
good. And one other comment, and I hope we don't lose focus of this. I mean, the engineering's fine, and that's what I was involved in my career, but I spent a career in a public utility, electrical utility, that safety's a culture. And you got to drive that safety culture, and it's not just the pedestrians, it's the drivers, it's everybody. And so, you know, we can engineer it all day long, but how do we get that culture? How do you drive that? You know, we're gonna need those partners, either the school system or whomever, I don't know who all the partners may be, to get that education out there, social media, and get people, not just the drivers, you know, pedestrians don't pay attention. There's a whole lot more distractions as a driver than when I was, only had an 8-track tape player, that was it. That was different.
So, Mr. Dixon, just to go back to your prior question, right, on Wilkinson Boulevard, it ties into our recommendation that you should keep in touch with DOT to make sure that the rail trail crossing of Wilkinson is designed to your needs and desires, right? So, to this question, it is a safety culture, right? So I've worked at different engineering firms. I know some that are really safety conscious, and it shows. Some that are not, and it makes a difference. So as part of Vision Zero, right, we seek funds not only to do intersection improvements, but also to have programs in place to educate the public, right? When I talked about folks being impaired, it's not only alcohol, it's not only drugs, it's texting and driving, right? So it's all part of education. If you make it a safety culture, it's the only way to make it work, right? That will be the weakest link. If you can build all the infrastructure, the safest infrastructure in the world, if you don't have that safety culture, that programmatic, you know, educational component, it's not gonna work.
Thank you.
Any comments?
The biggest one I have is connectivity. When we allow a project to go through planning, I think Smith Farm is the one that has the biggest gap. You know, they've got a sidewalk. Where does the sidewalk go? It doesn't go anywhere. But we got a sidewalk. So how do we fill those gaps?
I think part of the discussion on that case, if I remember correctly, is how do you connect those three residential units or single-family homes from Smith Farm to Harris Teeter? And there was some movement, I think, with the property owners. Maybe that's happening, but I understand your point. But maybe follow up from.
It's gonna be built in the next, it's gonna be finished in the next year, so.
Sure. So on that specific example, the developer did offer a payment in lieu or a contribution because it wouldn't cover the full expense of the connectivity. But they offered $30,000 toward installing sidewalk to bridge that gap in the connection. It's also identified as a project on the city's CIP plan, and it's something that staff's in coordination. There's potential interest in partnership at the table, so we're looking at some ongoing plans at that location, but it is a city project for that specific investment. That being said, there are opportunities throughout this plan to fill the gaps that could be considered through the capital improvement plan as investments, through partnerships, through grants, or for a variety of different funding opportunities to bridge those, because connectivity, you're right, as we get development coming on board, linking those is something that has been an ongoing challenge, and then especially on the peninsula where our municipal limits go in and out, collaboration is going to be imperative in terms of making those links and working with Gaston County in how we put sidewalk connectivity on the ground there.
I think another example is Woodlawn Development. That property wrapped around a single-family home. If I understand correctly, the developer did continue sidewalks to connect the two parcels. But I think, looking ahead and sort of catch this, is there an opportunity, if the plan is adopted as presented or in some version, to then have a pedestrian plan overlay with any conditional zoning cases that are presented to planning and zoning and to council, so that we can understand where those gaps may be, and then perhaps provide offsite mitigation, or at least understand where the city needs to come through and provide opportunities for those gaps related to the maps that also is provided.
Sure, we would be happy to include that as part of staff's analysis moving forward. Looking at our pedestrian plan is one of the main resources, or any long-range plan, especially when we're doing conditional zoning, to make sure that any project is consistent. But we'd be happy to provide that completely as a separate section, right, for honed-in analysis there.
But that's just conditional rezoning, though. Is there some means by, in other words, I'm thinking about all the improvements to the roadways that a developer has agreed to make because they had a conditional rezoning. We said, yeah, we hear your condition, here are ours. Is there some, any thought given to including changing the land development code to put it in writing so that they have to comply to connectivity within the city of Belmont, much as they would have to improve turning lanes, a mile and a half away from their development, just in order to, in other words, think a little bit bigger than just conditional rezoning.
Sure.
Can we make it so that you want to build here, here's one of the things you have to do? Is that viable? Is that a thought that's reasonable or not?
So there are some things that would need to be reviewed with Parks Wilson when it comes to offsite improvements, but there's some language in relation to any new development, whether it's by right or conditional, for along frontages, along, in fact, some of them in center city areas, the TIA would now include pedestrian analysis as part of any new project within their center city core, regardless of whether or not that project is proceeding by right or through conditional zoning.
Okay.
And so sometimes staff can, by language in our ordinance, require them to construct improvements, other times dedicate right-of-way to allow for future construction. But we do our best, regardless of the format of the approval process, to work with every development team to understanding the needs of our community and how they can partner with us on their success.
Anything else, Dan? Cynthia, do you have any comments?
The only comment that I have is that I thought it was unfortunate that we didn't study more of the property around South Point High School, because I heard some complaints about the joggers jogging around there and the connectivity of the sidewalks there. But overall, I think that we're behind on our infrastructure, and this is a really good start. So, I looked and I didn't see it, maybe I missed it. But it seems like over there by Chick-fil-A, I mean, it would be great to have a pedestrian bridge there, but that's probably a little aggressive from where we are now to go there. But one of my biggest concerns, of course, is protecting the children at the school, especially when school is ending and starting, and especially if the cross-country team is jogging. So I just think we missed looking at those sidewalks over there. Or maybe I missed it, you can show me, I looked around, I couldn't find it.
No, that's okay, and I would say this kind of feedback, just know that we're not done with the conversation. So the city has been really graciously offered by NCDOT 2 years in a row planning grants to help us with infrastructure planning. Doesn't help necessarily in funding that we received right now on the actual construction of it, but planning is the first step in order to identify funding for the rest, right? And so the goal would be that after the adoption of the pedestrian plan update, we actually zoom out a bit more and look at all multimodal connectivity. And so if there are some updates as we continue that ongoing conversation with the city planning board and city council that we want to look at, even if they're pedestrian in nature, those things can continue to be a part of the ongoing dialogue.
Do you guys have a grant writer or someone on staff that's designated to look at these grants?
No, not right now. These are, the one that you've seen before you was done by the planning department, as well as the other one that we will be starting in January.
I think it would be interesting if we could look at how much it costs to have a grant writer and how much we could bring in by utilizing grants so that we can get some of this done.
Noted.
That should be directed to these guys.
Oh,
Great.
that's all I have.
Okay.
They're listening.
Jason.
Thank you. I'm not sure if I'm on or not. Can you hear me? First, I would reiterate and emphasize Mr. Brennan's points about the priority scoring on projects. I think it would be helpful to know a little more information about the causes of some of these collisions at these problematic intersections to help. I mean, I'm sure that would be one of the primary drivers in determining priority. Instead of assuming that, for instance, maybe it's design all the time. I think that would be very helpful to know. And secondly, you mentioned a couple of examples of these intersections, Hallway and Central and Main. And I imagine that those are just general examples, but to the extent that those are actual examples that we wish to incorporate at some point, like for instance, the intersection of Central and Main. I know that through our dealings with NCDOT, there's the potential that that intersection would be part of the broader reconfiguration of the NC-74 and the NC-7 intersection, so it could back up, even further into that. So I'm sure that all that will be coordinated with planning and zoning, but I think that's something to take into account with that particular intersection.
On that, I would just say the renderings are really helpful when we go to apply for any sort of funding assistance to help really visualize the city's goals and intent. They're not intended to be the final visualization, but they're a great tool in order to understand the types of improvements the city's looking to invest in. And so we, in partnership with Alta, we're really excited to be able to include at least one visualization from each of the project package areas recommended.
Just to respond to the two renderings, right, Main and Central, if you look at the map that's up on the screen right now, doesn't have a crash in the way there, the parking hallway, there's a little cluster surrounding right there. And then one additional comment, in relation to staff, we did provide a sidewalk inventory to the city as part of separate project. It's all in GIS format, so you're seeing not only like this map or the big map, but you have all the raw data to continue to keep track of safety and sidewalks all around Belmont for foreseeable future. And I would ask that you continue to support staff, right, because it takes a lot of manpower to keep track of that as well. But it's a tool that will help you maybe get some of the concessions from the developers that we're looking for.
I'm glad you mentioned that because that's part of one of the comments I have. I'll promise to keep this short. Related to sidewalks, is it important to planning board or council or even the public to know how much sidewalk is needed to create this connectivity that we desire? When you look at the map, there appears to be not a whole lot in certain areas, and so how do you, from a public campaign perspective, begin to promote that we do need sidewalks and that we are deficient in 50% of our neighborhoods or 50% in the city? Does that then begin to build interest that sidewalks are needed, whether it's through public-private partnerships or a bond or however to drive that safety and public interest is at the forefront here? Can you aggregate that data from GIS to know how many sidewalk, like linear feet, miles, whatever it is, related to how many are already in place? Could that be shared as part of a presentation?
Yes, so that the raw data is available, and you can run that to specific geographic areas and say, hey, in this neighborhood, X amount, right, what linear feet of sidewalk we need and so forth.
Sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Another comment, and this might be for staff. You weren't part of the last pedestrian plan, correct? So, what was done in the 2009 pedestrian plan? Do we have any successes or major accomplishments that can be shared? Again, from a public campaign perspective, there's a lot of data here, and if we're going to ask for funding increases or things of that nature, how do we promote that we are taking this seriously and that we want to put our money where our mouth is and actually improve connectivity through a public campaign? Does that make sense?
Sure, and I don't have that exact list with me here tonight, but we do keep track of that data, and it's submitted annually to NCDOT in order for them to be able to evaluate metrics of how the city is making progress on those plans. So it'd be something I'd be happy to be able to provide for you guys. That being said, this is a plan update, and so what you're seeing is some of those recommendations that were in the 2009 plan that have not yet been accomplished are also still included in this plan because they're also still a need for our community. And so there might be some recommendations that maybe the need's not really there when we heard from public input now, right? So those dropped off and maybe some new ones got added, but what you are seeing is some carryover because this is really an update of that existing foundational plan.
So, like you mentioned that, is there like a timeline on projects? I mean, we've heard from 3 major buckets. So then when the 3 major buckets get done, what's next? Or are there any priorities within the buckets that we want to get done within a year? Is this a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? How do we not only in the public interest share what's going to happen, but also how do you plan for that from a funding perspective?
Sure, I would encourage you guys to have some conversations around that among the table. A lot of it is related to funding, and really it's related to the city's priorities and schedule. And so that dialogue can be had utilizing this plan as the foundational starting point for this conversation.
I would assume that, assuming that there's a recommendation today and that council adopts that recommendation in November, I would think that council would want to talk about a lot of these things at their planning retreat in January and set the priorities and, vision for how, this is going to be brand new, newly approved. It seems like that would be the place, because that's usually where we sit down and have long range vision and goals and planning, and I would think that would be a high priority for council.
So to James' point, similarly, we just add to maybe Miles and pushing it to the agenda for the January retreat, because I don't think we have done that, particularly in this focus, done that in the past over 2 that
Yeah.
I've been part of. So.
But I mean, that's gonna, we have to take account in future budgets. We've talked about, setting some aside for some of the more expensive items, perhaps setting aside some money now so that more is available later. But I just think that sort of dovetails into the most productive. And certainly we've had people come and go during the planning retreat, and if it's worthwhile to have the planning board participate in that section of the retreat, we can do that as well. But that just seems to me like the most logical time to do it. It'll, just be a couple months after adoption of the plan. It'll be fresh in our minds, and there's a lot of things to do, but also, obviously, funding is the question, and that does. I am intrigued by the idea of a grant writer. It seems like a lot of times, especially, whether it's Main Street or some of our other departments, we talk about grants and, there's a lot of grants out there. I just don't know, I don't know what's possible. I don't know whether that makes sense, because sometimes it seems like we write 50 grant proposals and we might get one. But that does intrigue me because it comes up a lot, and it might be good to have someone with that expertise around.
Did the city of Mount Holly, did they have one?
No, sir.
Cass County does?
I think Gaston County had a grant writer at one point, they still do, that'd be a consideration, if we get to consult.
I was about to say, is that a resource for all the municipalities in the county, or is it just primarily Richmond County?
It's just the county, right?
Because I almost wonder, to your point, if these other municipalities don't have one, if you could do almost like a shared agreement. And just municipalities come together, I don't know if that's a possibility, but.
I think it's worthwhile to explore the possibility. I don't know whether it's that, I don't want to create a position that's not justified, so I'd be interested in exploring some opportunities. 'Cause it seems like everyone's always looking for grants and scrambling to write them in compressed timeframes.
Environmental sustainability.
Yeah, exactly.
With that in mind, speak to the Safe Streets program, and do you have to write a grant proposal? And is your plan sufficient with the information to present with that? Talk about that, please.
There we go. Perfect segue. Thank you for the question. I wanted to provide some information in relation to grants, right? So I know the frustration sometimes that you have to write 50 grants to win one, and it can be an expense, right? So I showed the example of other communities around here that are on the Safe Streets for All Action Plan awards between $160,000 to $400,000, right? From federal one to Google plans. That's an easy lift. So the feds have made the Safe Streets for All application really easy. It's something that Tiffany found the time, but she doesn't have the time, but she could do it herself, right? Based on the information that she has right now. So could provide support to staff. I think that's doable. Some grant applications are easier to do than others. Safe Streets for All is a big bang for the buck. It's one I would recommend you pursue. The action plan portion of that is easy. Right? If you're going to apply for implementation funds to actually build something, then you have to have the action plan in place first. Right? So you have to do it at first year, then apply for the implementation grant next for 2 years down the line. And that one's a little bit more complicated. So anytime you apply for a capital program, right, it's a little bit more complicated. You might have to get engineers involved. Might have to get folks involved in doing benefit cost analysis, right, to make sure that your application ranks high. And 2 final points, just keep in mind, match, right, if you're going to apply for $1 million, federal match is usually 20/80, so you need 200,000. If you're going to apply for $10 million, you need $2 million, right, so make sure that it fits your budget. And then second, again, grant management. Right, make sure that you have the capacity in place, the staff in place that can manage the grant. State grants are usually better. Federal grants can be a lot of red tape and paperwork. Safe Streets for All, they're trying to make it a little bit more manageable, but not every federal program is like that.
Couple more comments. Back to the report. The correlation between sidewalks, as I understand it, and multimodal as it's presented, multimodal includes bike width, the 8-foot minimum, I think is what we have in city ordinance. Is that correct for new projects?
So 8 foot is a commercial sidewalk, 10 foot is your multi-use path minimum width. And
So-
then bike lane is, I believe, 5 is currently ASHTO standard.
So, just looking at the maps, it's sort of, I guess, when we dive into projects, or looking at the implementation of this long-term, you know, I saw in the maps some locations where a multimodal sidewalk was recommended, where a sidewalk is already there. So is that a priority? Obviously, this is policy-driven, but is that a priority when there are no sidewalks in other locations? So I would implore staff and council to look at what we already have in place from a connectivity perspective that we can sort of quote-unquote get by with. Recognizing that multimodal is obviously the desired outcome, but if we don't have to make that sidewalk from 3 feet to 10 feet in areas because we already have something in connectivity in place, that priority should be made for connectivity and not where it's already connected. And then also related to that, if there are opportunities where we have to acquire right-of-way to create a multimodal path, that may be less desirable when you don't have to obviously acquire right-of-way, because that can be done quicker. And so to try to, again, from a public interest perspective, really be able to present this to the public and then show that work is being done. And I think some of those low-hanging fruit projects that of just connecting sidewalks could be important in the public interest. Finally, just a couple of notes on the graphics. On the North Belmont Improvement Package. So what you have highlighted is all included in the I-85 project.
Everything is highlighted
Right.
in yellow.
In yellow, highlighted in yellow. So we don't know when that's happening. It's gonna happen. It's $634 million. I understand that. Or is there anything that you're recommending for that area that would be safety improvements for the city of Belmont to take a look at? As you go down 74, as you get closer to Gaston College, or any of those intersections, opportunities that should be highlighted. Like, my recommendation would be to make all of the things that we're responsible for in yellow. Then if it's NCDOT responsible, it's currently in yellow, make that green or purple, so that when you turn to the next page, the same items that are in yellow is not NCDOT funded, but they're Belmont funded. Does that make sense?
And of course, the idea, and I think one of the recommendations was that we continue to engage with NCDOT to see whether some things that are not currently in yellow might end up in yellow.
Did you come down?
Yeah.
And then lastly, I think, on number 3, the Eastern Belmont Improvement Package, there's a stip for this, the bridge and 74 widening, correct? And all of that improvement where 7 meets 74 is also going to be impacted, so can that show up? Because I would recommend that what you've shown as a crossing improvement will be improved with that STIP project.
Yeah, we had a long discussion about Wilkinson. I think that's a very good comment. We can list it that way. There was a debate about what to include or not in relation to Wilkinson because of that STIP item, and also about the future Silver Line.
Sure.
If and when that comes.
I think it may show more improvement, at least on this side of the city, related to the sidewalks at Gaston College are going to be improved. That will show, again, more positive input back to the public. I think that's all I've got.
And I got one comment I want to ask Spencer, and you had a picture of it. The utility poles in the middle of the sidewalk is a huge problem. Just walking downtown or wherever, you got to step into the street to get around the. And so I don't know how you prioritize that or how the city looks at that, but I just think that's a huge safety concern.
It is, and part of it is noted in our sidewalk inventory. Right, so we classified sidewalk segments where there were no sidewalks, where it was in bad condition, or where there were major obstructions like holes. So that is something that staff can keep track of, can help you prioritize investments.
Speaking of grants, are there deadlines that have to be met for certain grants? apply for certain grants by a certain date, otherwise you gotta wait a year. It would be helpful to know, I think, which ones are which, so that in the event we do approve this plan, we're not, in other words, if something's due in January, you might wanna take action before your planning session and get that request in. The timing may impact on how quickly you can get something going, how quickly you can get a request in for a grant. So it'd be helpful to know what that timeline is.
Correct. We are providing Tiffany with an updated grant schedule. She'll have that in hand and be able to keep track of that.
Well, to that, I mean, I would just say we have had a discussion about grant writers in the past. And it didn't make sense to bring one on full-time, but on an ad hoc basis,
Yeah.
I would agree, because it is a very specialized field. And what I've learned is that people reviewing the grants look for specialized language and keywords in the grant. And you have to be familiar with that to give your application an elevated chance of being awarded. So I would be in favor of that, but I like your approach with the root cause methodology is to target our greatest needs first. I mean, I think you said we're at a 30,000 foot level overview, so we're gonna need to drill down a little bit, I think, and find out what the most critical needs are.
Yeah, there's a distinct methodology of how to do that, and you can get more, and we may be able to get some more data, some more refinement as to why that crash happened there. So that's not that's I think an investment of time that's worth doing. And the other thing is you talk about, Bridget, is buy the drink, you know, write me a grant, buy the drink, you know, hire somebody to come in and do that one, and we may hire somebody else to do the next one, but not a full-time staff person, but someone who hangs out a shingle and says, I write grants, and you go hire them for project. You all can consider.
I had one more question about Vision Zero. I noticed in the slide presentation, the other pictures and discussion focused on cities like Charlotte, Durham, and Roanoke, and Austin, and Sacramento, which are all much larger than Belmont. Has this Vision Zero program been adopted in cities our size and successfully managed?
Yes. So, I had a slide showing oh, here. So, yeah, so this is the latest round of just the Safe Streets for All funding. So for all these cities, they have to have a Vision Zero plan in place, or in case of all the cities, Little Charlotte, they're preparing the Vision Zero action plans. So, unfortunately, it is the bigger cities, right, that got most of the funding to begin with. One of the goals for Safe Streets for All is to reach out to every community. We don't want to fund just big cities. Per capita, a city like Belmont might be more impacted than Charlotte or New York City or whatever.
Where is the land of Scott?
And the sky is the NPO. It covers Asheville down to Brevard and Savona, in the 5-county region.
I thought that sounds like in Montana.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, any other comments from council?
The only other comment, the graphic fatalities are a horrible situation, but being the math person, the fact that we've got that per 100,000 and we're such a small town, I think that is overly alarming, even though it should be alarming. So that particular graphic concerns me.
All right. Planning board, any other comments, questions, discussions?
What is the motion you're looking for, sir?
Hearing none, I would entertain a motion that the plan presented is reasonable in the public interest, or you can just read what Tiffany provided to you.
Well, the first thing you have to do is move to accept the plan, correct?
Correct.
I move that we accept the plan as presented, to present it to the city council for their consideration.
Okay. Motion made by Neil. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dan Hartley. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I further move that the plan update is reasonable and is in the public best interest and consistent with the comprehensive land use plan and the goals of it, goal 3, goal 6, and goal 8.
Thank you, Neil. Motion made by Neil. Do I have a second?
A second.
Seconded by Walter Dixon. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries, and report carries. Up to council. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I add something? And I don't know if this was in your report or not, but the Safe Streets and Roads program started in 2022, and it runs through 26.
It's a short fuse.
So there's not 3 more years. 2 years left. Yeah, 3 more years.
All right, thanks for your time, planning board. We do have one additional item for other business. I might need a little bit of help with this, but we've been asked to have a representative on the Transportation Action Committee. This is a group that City Council is putting together. If y'all want to talk more about it, or if staff wants to talk more about it, you can. They are looking for a volunteer to participate on this committee. If you could also talk about the timeline by which we need to know.
There
are also 2 others that are on the board that aren't here that could get nominated, but we would like to let them know too. So if you could share a little bit more about this.
Sure, so I will share a brief introduction and then I welcome City Council to share more about their goals and timeline for this appointment. However, City Council at its last meeting did adopt some guidelines for the establishment of a Transportation Action Committee, and as a component of that, the representatives outlined included 1 representative from the Planning and Zoning Board. And so staff is seeking a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Board on who should be seated as a part of that committee. For the specifics on the committee, I would defer to the mayor or any other representative of council that would like to share vision and goals and any information that planning board should know prior to making their selection.
Man, I'd like to add, I know he's not here, and I hate to, I'm probably not consider it, but Norman probably has more passion for traffic on a lot of our meetings, and I think he'd be an ideal candidate, but I don't want to throw him on the bus because he's not here, but I would.
Sure.
Isn't that how you became chair?
You know what, and it worked, I've never.
It's like a mess you're on the ship, you're not there, you got it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can summarize the intent of this committee briefly. We'll be having quarterly meetings with representatives from NCDOT to discuss transportation in Belmont. So the intent here is to have this committee basically function as a liaison between the people in the city of Belmont and the people at NCDOT who built the roads. So the idea is to bring their attention and their eyes on the problems that we experience every day. So we're looking for somebody to, but I guess the thought, and council can correct me if I'm wrong, behind the planning position is to bring somebody who's kind of looking at this from a planning perspective. As along with that, we'll have 2 citizen representatives who are not connected to planning or city council, but we will also have 2 city council representatives, a variety of staff representatives, and yeah, so it's be a good group, I think. This is an exciting undertaking, I think, that we're doing, and should make I think, a difference in the results we get out on CDOT if results from other municipalities who have adopted similar programs are any indication. So right now, it's just a quarterly time commitment, but I think the committee's got the flexibility to adjust that as needed.
And just to add, because I was one of the ones that brought this up, to have P&Z, a representative from P&Z. I think not only, having the planning perspective, but I think this would help us to be a little bit more proactive as a group when we're looking at future developments, or y'all are looking at future developments before it comes to us, to talk about, the action plan that we just looked at tonight, or where it makes sense for future NCDOT investment. So that was kind of my rationale, trying to bring P&Z to the table on this from one of the representatives.
That's great.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend you contact Mr. Rivers and twist his arm a little bit.
We can do that.
Indicate to him that we all think he'd be just the best guy for this whole job.
He came out of the record.
Now we're in.
We can, is it an action item to vote on the representative, or is it volunteer?
I heard volunteer.
I believe it's a volunteer, but maybe a conditional action to say we're appointing him upon his acceptance of the appointment, or whatever you'd like to do.
What's the timeline?
We don't have a meeting scheduled with them for a while, right?
We'll do it in November. All right, well, if he doesn't come to November, then it'll be action.
Maybe recap that part.
I will. Yeah. Great. That's it for other business, is that correct? All right, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Made by Neil, seconded by
Second.
Cynthia, thank you. Any discussion to adjourn? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Adjournment. Thank you so much.
All right. If I could get the gavel, we're gonna roll right into a council workshop. So I will go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Well, it's not official until you travel.
Oh, do we want, do we need a break? Okay, we're gonna take a 5-minute break. to order. I'll entertain a motion to set the agenda up with the understanding that we will be moving board interviews up to number 1 and then shifting everything else down.
I'll make a motion to set the agenda with the modification of moving item B8 to B1 and items B1 through 7 move down 1.
I'll second.
All right, motion is second. All those in favor?
Uh,
All right. So,
oh, do we need to put our mics on for interviews?
what do we need to do for that?
No, we don't, but I'll, no.
We don't,
Yeah, we don't.
normally broadcast.
Okay, all right, so let's follow our normal procedure for that then.
I'll get Zach to just do it. I'm not on the broadcast.
Okay. Do we need to hold off for a minute while I do that? Okay. Please hold. Yes, well, I think the people listening online might listen to it, but,
Can you use that?
yeah. Maybe something with the new project in here, we can get some speakers to play some, hold music for us.
Nice.
Where are the MTVs going?